Good morning. Well, it is where I am. Well, here we are. Number 6 in a romp in time. As I promised, I would be putting out the Romp in Time series one every other day because I'm finishing the Romp in Time series as quickly as possible. I mean, the Romp in Time series was completed over a period of many years. The books themselves are over there. I started my career here, and they go over to here, and then they carried on here and going over here. So somewhere around about 2006, they started here, and Romp in Time 7 is here, and that was completed somewhere around about 2019, but we're putting it in here because otherwise it would take far too long to put on here, and I'm not going to make you wait all that long. So I'm waffling, I'm sorry, I apologize. Anyway, so we've got one more to go after this, but Romp in Time 6, it's quite dramatic because quite a number of things happen in it which are rather shocking, especially to Frankie, which is dramatic and not at all like has happened to him in book 1 and book 2, for instance, but all will be revealed. Anyway, a Romp in Time 6, here it is. It's not so confusing as the rest of it, but it's I'll leave it to you.
Welcome to a deep dive into an adventure that tested friendships, shattered deeply held identities, and quite literally tore at the very fabric of reality.
It really did.
We've been handed the source material for what is the 6th installment of a truly remarkable saga, a romp in time, treachery, betrayal, and vindictiveness.
This is a monumental chapter, It's our 6th deep dive into this series, and it's just so clear from the sources that the author Molly, our narrator, was dragged from this position of an objective observer right into the thick of it.
Right into an emotional and temporal disaster.
Absolutely. We are not just tracking temporal mechanics here. We are tracking the cost of unlimited power, and it's wielded by deeply human, and as we see here, increasingly resentful personalities.
That transition from observer to participant is so key, isn't it? And it begins with this really stark reminder of mortality. The sources open with Molly, now in her 60s, reflecting on a horrific, life-threatening accident she had on the Undercliff.
The end of last summer, yeah.
She recalls falling a staggering 60 meters. I mean, it's unbelievable. She was saved barely, only by the sheer density of the foliage, which stopped her from plunging down a final deadly 30-meter drop.
The detail in the source material is chilling. She suffered 2 broken ankles, broken ribs, a dislocated shoulder, and a skull fracture. All of that led to this life and death battle with sepsis while she was in intensive care.
And she was bedridden for 3 months.
3 months. And during that time, she was often delirious, hallucinating, even shouting in what she calls a form of English now long ago forgotten.
Which, of course, the hospital staff found fascinating. They couldn't place the dialect.
Of course not. But her reflection on it all is what really sets the tone for this entire story.
It really does. It serves as this powerful, immediate contrast. Here is a woman who has access to the most powerful tool in existence, a time machine. Yet she is utterly powerless against a simple fall.
It highlights how tenuous life is, right? It's this sharp contrast with the assumed invulnerability and power that her time-traveling friends have. She even says explicitly that she probably wouldn't have survived that fall as a teenager.
She thinks her advanced age somehow made the survival instinct stronger.
Exactly. And this brush with death, it's the thematic foundation for this entire adventure. Molly returns to the group and she realizes that despite their unlimited wealth, despite the traveler, core relationships can just shatter.
And that sometimes the biggest threat isn't the laws of physics or some historical anomaly.
No. It's sheer internal festering betrayal. The narrator tells us that keeping track of her friends' personalities, which became separated geographically, mentally, and spiritually, proved to test her humble writing endeavors beyond almost endurance. It became a story about internal collapse.
Okay, so let's unpack this internal breakdown. We absolutely have to start with the foundational structure of the group's extraordinary lifestyle. Let's talk about the financial engine that powers everything. Va's unlimited gold machine.
This machine, it truly is the heart of their modern existence, and because of that, it's the primary source of the conflict here.
It's housed on a secret floor underneath the swimming pool at the Whitechapel residence, a seemingly limitless source of wealth.
And it's alien technology, brought by Va. It converts base materials, even simple water molecules, into pure gold using this highly controlled atomic manipulation. It is the definition of absolute financial power.
And this incredible power source became the target of a stunning act of treachery, one led by Va's own future self, Old Va.
Which is just, the psychology of that alone is fascinating.
It's not just a physical theft, it's a theft of identity, of security. The sources confirmed the co-conspirators were Frankie, who was Stewart's partner of over a decade.
16 years, I think.
Smithers, Anne's, let's call him questionable, mercenary husband. And Kevin, a devious but sharp 20-year-old carer, brought in to look after Old Va.
What's so fascinating here is that Old Va's motive wasn't just greed. It was pure, highly specific, and deeply personal revenge that she had cultivated over centuries.
Because she was left behind. Marooned in 1536 when Va and the group fled a temporal incident.
Exactly. She was forced to slog through hundreds of years completely alone. She experienced starvation, hardship, and the sheer monotony of being trapped in time. She developed this profound, lasting resentment towards her younger self, Va, for that abandonment.
So she wanted to inflict psychological pain. She wanted Va to sweat, as the sources put it.
Old Va explicitly states she knew Va would eventually find her, but she wanted to use the younger Va's toy for a while. She wanted her to feel that crushing awkwardness and sheer shock of betrayal from those closest to her.
And the plan itself was meticulous. It really utilized the vulnerabilities of the co-conspirators.
Oh, absolutely. Kevin, for instance, believed Old Va was Va's ailing mother, a brilliant deception that secured him access. They just waited until Va and George were distracted, visiting Molly in Dorset to seize the machine.
The physical execution, though, was far from elegant.
Not at all. We need to remember this isn't some compact electronic device. It's a massive gold-generating machine. The three men, Kevin, Frankie, and Smithers, struggled profoundly just to lift the thing.
The sources say they had to physically drag and haul it up various stairs, risking serious injury just to load it into Smithers' borrowed van.
And Old Va's intention was never permanent disappearance. She wanted Va to know exactly who did it, but only after she'd had some fun and converted enough gold to cash in.
Okay, so now we have to shift to the immediate intimate trigger for this entire sequence of betrayal.
The collapse of Stewart and Frankie's relationship.
16 years. The infidelity was discovered by Stewart on Christmas Eve. He found Frankie sleeping with Kevin, the 20-year-old carer who was also helping with the grand theft.
The discovery triggered not just a breakup, but a complete identity implosion for Stewart. And this is all detailed through his confidential therapy sessions with a therapist named Irene.
Right. And Stewart, who has always identified as gay since he was a teenager, he's 44 now, was suddenly plagued by these intense nightmares.
Vivid, terrifying dreams. He described them as being about being heterosexual and intimate with women. He felt a profound terror when he would wake up, as if his internal world was just violently rearranging itself without his permission.
This is where Irene's analogy becomes so essential. We really need to pause and absorb this.
The beach ball underwater concept.
Exactly. Irene suggested that maintaining a false or repressed front suppressing one's true nature, whatever that might be, takes this enormous, sustained emotional and psychological energy. It's like trying to hold a brightly colored beach ball completely submerged underwater.
And the betrayal, the shock, the trauma of finding Frankie with Kevin that acts like the hand releasing the beach ball.
The energy dedicated to suppression just vanishes. Stewart let go.
Irene suggested that the trauma allowed him to recognize a deeper, truer nature bisexuality or latent heterosexuality that he had suppressed, maybe due to societal expectations, maybe internalized homophobia, or just the convenience of his life as it was.
And the immediate real-world consequence was this rapid, intense sexual shift.
Almost instantaneous. He found himself attracted to Lily, a 34-year-old Wicca practitioner and artist. He described their connection, both physical and emotional, as comforting and right, especially against the backdrop of the emotional devastation of his breakup.
The sources really do present this as an almost instantaneous shift, which challenges her, rigid notions of fixed sexuality, especially under extreme stress.
Well, let me challenge that for a moment. The beach ball analogy is incredibly useful for understanding repression, but does the source material provide any deeper evidence? Or does it feel a little too convenient?
That's a great question. Is it plausible that a 44-year-old lifelong gay man would instantly develop this intense physical attraction to a woman purely based on external trauma? Or are the sources implying that bisexuality was always there, just hidden by the structure of his relationship with Frankie?
I think that's the critical point. The sources lean heavily on the idea that the structure of his life with Frankie was the suppressive force. His identity was fixed around the relationship rather than his core feeling.
So when the relationship structure crumbled,
the identity collapsed with it. The source details conversations where Stewart recalls always appreciating feminine beauty, but he just dismissed it as purely aesthetic. Now it's visceral, so it really suggests a latent fluidity that was released by the trauma rather than some sudden, unbelievable conversion.
The emotional connection with Lily was a foundation, but the sexual attraction followed immediately, which would confirm that the suppression was real.
Exactly.
So while Stewart is grappling with this profound internal shift, Va was focusing her laser-like attention back on the people who caused the initial damage.
The betrayers themselves.
Let's look at the fallout for Frankie and Smithers.
Va's reaction to the theft of her machine was not just practical concern. It was pure, unadulterated rage, bordering on hysterical fury. She experienced this visceral sense of worthlessness and profound violation that she said she hadn't felt since she was under the control of her former tormentor, Timus.
Because in her mind, she had saved them.
Yes. She had rescued Frankie and Stewart, and their loyalty was supposed to be absolute, a foundational stone of her new life, and they had just shattered it.
Her actions were brutal and swift. She cut off all financial support, completely exiling Frankie from the group's sphere of influence.
This left Frankie just scrambling. He was forced to pour the remnants of his initial £11 million lottery fortune, which was now virtually gone through poor management and the cost of this theft, into a low-cost slum flat in Stratford.
Stewart, sadly, visited him there.
Yeah, and the description is just awful. He found Frankie unkempt, desperate, living in a place of utter shambles that apparently stank perpetually of urine and feces, just overwhelmed by the decay.
And Va, showing absolutely no mercy, declared Frankie to be nothing more than a thief and a liar and an adulterer, deserving of his squalor. She compared him to vermin.
It's a shocking display of Va's capacity for merciless retribution when her core security is threatened. It really is.
And what about Smithers, Anne's husband? He was already viewed with deep suspicion by Va and Stewart.
Oh, completely. He's described as a gambling, freelance reporter, constantly sporting a rough, unshaven face and an old coat. A complete mercenary dressed in the opposite of the group's refinement.
So Va's confrontation with him must have been intense.
It was physical and terrifying. She violently demanded the gold machine's hidden location. And she threatened him not with death, but with something far worse. Extreme time exile.
The threat was specific, wasn't it?
Chillingly specific, sending him back 1,000,000 years to be devoured by a saber-toothed cat. A slow, terrifying, and historically inconsequential death.
And Smithers broke.
Immediately, he broke under the pressure and disappeared, warning Frankie to do the same. This entire sequence just confirmed old Va's hypothesis that the group was fractured, that everyone had a price, and that the illusion of unbreakable friendship was just that, an illusion.
So the initial betrayal destroyed their friendships, their finances, and their trust in a single devastating weekend.
Now, with that emotional landscape utterly shattered, the group discovers that their reality itself is starting to crumble beneath their feet.
They move from an internal crisis to an external existential one.
We have to document this unsettling realization that their past actions, or simply the repeated use of the time machine, have created a fragmented, unstable reality.
And this instability manifests initially through Va herself, right? She begins suffering from intense night feelings of terror and these cognitive issues where parts of history suddenly don't match up with the collective memories of Anne and Stewart.
Which is terrifying for Va. Having lived for 1,500 years, she believed her advanced brain would be immune to temporal instability.
So what's the mechanism here? Is her brain just deteriorating, or is the timeline actively pushing back against her long existence?
Well, the source document suggests that the multiple minor jumps Va has undertaken to find her future and past selves, and her original controller, Timus, have created this temporal dissonance within her long-term memory. She is essentially experiencing multiple versions of reality at the same time.
The central anomaly that makes the group realize this is systemic is the death of Henry VIII.
Yes. Va insists he died of natural causes in 1547. But Anne and Stewart's collective reality, confirmed by frantic internet searches, proves that he was violently stabbed in 1548 by Nancy Stanton, a minor courtier's wife who was later declared insane.
That 1 year difference and the shift from natural death to violent regicide, that must have created a moment of just profound paranoia.
It did, and it doesn't stop there. Anne vividly remembers Molly's friend Claire, a tall woman with a long scar on her right temple from a motorbike accident.
Anne is certain Claire was a significant part of their social circle.
But Claire simply doesn't exist in anyone else's reality, not even Molly's. This suggests that the timeline isn't just split between Va and the others, but it's actively shifting for individuals, creating these pockets of localized reality only a few people remember.
They start treating history checks as a frightening casual parlor game.
Checking Wikipedia nervously, realizing that one of them, or just the very existence of the time machine, has unwittingly altered the past. Va, distraught by her cognitive issues and this instability, even considers sending the traveler long into the future where she can't reach him anymore.
She feels the universe's natural balance is critically compromised.
Which is a huge admission for her. And this systemic instability coincides with Molly's immediate pressing personal concern, a concern that sets the next disaster in motion.
Molly, the narrator, is having increasingly vivid and disturbing dreams of Rose, the young maid from the 1800s Somerstown slums she had encountered years before.
These aren't just casual dreams, they're almost prophetic visions. Molly believes Rose is her lost sister. She even has dreams of her mother wearing the clothes of the period, walking toward her, pregnant with Rose.
And this deep emotional conviction compels her to petition Va to use the traveler for a rescue mission.
She is desperate to save Rose from Madame Caroline, the abusive medium who employed her.
And Va is highly reluctant, given the recent temporal instability.
Very reluctant, but she eventually agrees. Her rationalization is shaky, to say the least. She argues that removing an unknown child from the lowest class of 1800 society will not disturb the bigger picture, and that the universe will heal over the cracks.
This is Va attempting to justify a personal rescue while simultaneously ignoring the very real temporal anxieties the last few weeks. It's a classic case of one rule for me.
Absolutely. And the plan is highly tactical. We need to understand the weapon involved. The mission is to travel to May 2nd, 1800 and subdue Madame Caroline using a canister of heptanfluorine methocaptrate.
The nerve agent.
Yes, the heptanfluorine methocaptrate. It's a powerful aerosol nerve agent that induces instant but temporary unconsciousness.
And this substance originated as a weapon used by Timus in Va's old life, which shows that Va is still holding on to extremely dangerous military-grade technology.
The moral implications of keeping and deploying a nerve agent, even for a rescue, are immense. It looks benign like an old hairspray bottle, but it's their fail-safe against the dangerous realities of the past.
So the plan: gas the medium, grab Rose, and bring her back to 2033. But we have to note, before the disaster begins, that George's mysterious illness is still plaguing him.
Recurring vomiting, having bad days, which prevents him from joining the mission. It's this small detail that just underscores the idea that they're all vulnerable, even when standing still.
The stage is set for disaster. The rescue mission to 1800 begins, and it immediately becomes a catastrophic failure on the tactical front.
Which results in the accidental introduction of an 18th century psychopath into the present day, leading to these unforeseen and terrifying changes to the modern world.
The initial materialization is chaotic. They appear in Madame Caroline's house, which Molly notes is surprisingly dilapidated for a place of supposed occult power.
And Caroline reacts instantly and violently. She's a practicing medium, so she screams, believing they are ghosts invading her space.
In the chaos that follows, Va drops the traveler.
And before she can retrieve her power source, Vil Derek's brother, this brutal figure they encountered previously, bursts into the room. Vil is strong, uneducated, and intensely violent.
Stewart, trying to execute the plan, misses his target with the gas canister. He only partially subdues Vil.
Then the temporal catastrophe happens. In the scramble, Vil, in his thick brown suit and heavy hobnail boots, lunges. He somehow entered the bubble of the Traveler just as the group fled back to 2033.
And when Va makes the jump, Vil materializes with them. He's immediately transported from 1800s poverty into a 1930s block of flats occupied by extremely surprised drug users.
Hold on, we need to pause and address Vel's immediate actions here. The source material says Va, in a panic, focused solely on retrieving the dropped Traveler.
She executed several rapid, unplanned time jumps, first to 1973, then 2033, and then November 2033 to find an empty hallway.
And she left Anne, Molly, and the traumatized Rose plus Vil stranded in that block of flats. Does this not confirm Lily's later accusation? Va prioritized the machine, her power source, over the immediate safety of her oldest friends and the traumatized child she was meant to rescue.
It absolutely proves her ruthlessness. The source makes no attempt to hide it.
She rationalizes this betrayal by claiming she was focused on securing the Traveler, arguing she could immediately track and rescue them using its viewer. But the reality is, she prioritized her power and her security over her friends' immediate welfare.
This deep self-interest is the tragic flaw that continues to plague her leadership.
And it creates this temporary but terrifying situation where Anne and Molly, stuck with Rose and the psychopath Vil, have to fend for themselves.
So Val, this strong, uneducated villain from the 1800s, is now loose in modern London. He's focused only on gold, waving a deadly knife and demanding to know where Madame Caroline and his brother Derek are. How did Anne and Molly manage this situation?
They tried to bamboozle him completely. Anne and Molly, in this brilliant move of desperation, pretended to be powerful witches. They told him they could turn him into a toad if he didn't follow their instructions.
And that actually worked.
Temporarily. When Va finally located and retrieved them, Vil was captured. But not before George, under extreme duress, was forced to lie, telling Vil the gold was stored at a rented house in Tollett Street.
After the immediate danger subsided, Va decided she had to solve the Vil problem permanently.
So she sent him to 1771, thinking the hardship, disease, and lack of modern sanitation in that area would just kill him quickly. It was her attempt at a clean historical deletion.
And this was their first major interference that immediately warped global history.
The immediate consequence, when the group returned and checked the internet, was devastating. Major cultural touchstones of their collective reality were just gone.
The chain of changes included the sudden disappearance of the Tesco Express supermarket chain, all Agatha Christie novels vanished from history, and the entire 7-book Harry Potter series ceased to exist.
And even D-Day was delayed from June 1944 to 1945.
Let's just focus on the terror of this for a second. The loss of a supermarket chain is logistical, but the loss of iconic, universally known cultural artifacts, Harry Potter, Agatha Christie, that they know existed. How did the group react to the sudden absence of things they had recently discussed or read?
The sources describe a profound sense of temporal vertigo. They didn't just notice a change, they felt a sudden gaping hole in their shared memory. They'd reference a quote from a book only to be met with blank stares.
And the fact that D-Day, a pivotal event in modern history, was delayed by a year that would cause massive geopolitical and military shifts.
All traceable to the presence of one 18th century ruffian in the 1770s. It sent them into a panic. They realized the butterfly effect wasn't a metaphor, it was a deadly reality.
So the group, realizing the magnitude of the problem, continued tracking Vil.
Right. And he and Rose, who was still traumatized, had escaped Anne and Molly and were later apprehended by the police in 1941 at the Limehouse police station during the Blitz, of all places.
Trying to sell gold they had managed to procure and convert.
Exactly. So Va snatches them both again, using the blackout as cover, and decides she must eliminate Val's influence entirely. She realizes 1771 was too recent, too civilized.
So she decides on the most brutal solution, disposal into prehistory.
She sends him to year 1 AD, believing he couldn't possibly survive among the Celtic tribes in Roman Britain, a place of extreme violence, hardship, and isolation. She truly believed she was sending a historical nobody to an ancient hard time that would silence him forever.
But the catastrophe that followed was monumental, not just an erasure of books, but a foundational rewrite of their entire civilization.
They return to 2033 to find that St. Paul's Cathedral is gone, replaced by an ugly utilitarian 1970s brown building.
King's Cross, St. Pancras, and Euston stations, the Great London Termini, never existed. They were replaced by housing stock, some built by a company founded by a family called McBarry, which is Phil's surname.
And the change that strikes at the cultural and spiritual core of the UK, the primary religion in Britain is no longer Christianity. It now only exists in Ireland.
This massive historical alteration, the loss of a millennium of religious and architectural heritage, is traced directly to Villa's actions in year 1 AD.
The terror of that realization is just immense. A single uneducated man from 1800 placed in year 1 AD somehow managed to disrupt the early introduction or proliferation of Christianity in the island of Great Britain, fundamentally altering the course of subsequent history.
It proved, beyond any doubt, that even a nobody can trigger catastrophic ramifications on a global scale. The timeline was now fundamentally broken.
So they had no choice but to attempt the restoration. Va, Stewart, and Lily immediately go on a final, desperate mission to snatch Vil again. They decide they need to send him somewhere utterly and permanently sealed off from their timeline.
And that destination was 21,000 AD, specifically Brooklyn's timeline.
They chose this because that era is already described as dark, hot, and futuristic. And crucially, it's a year after Brooklyn was intentionally exiled there. The implication, though not explicitly stated, is that the 21,000 AD timeline is already fixed, stable, and unable to interact backward with their present.
Ensuring Vil is permanently gone and unable to cause further damage.
And they succeeded. After a horrifying, palpable feeling of history snapping back into place, their original reality, St. Paul's, Christianity, Harry Potter, all of it, was restored. But the events of the last few weeks left deep scars on the group.
The temporal crisis may have been resolved, but the personal, emotional, and relational damage was deep and immediate. Let's start with the central human consequence of the mission. Rose.
Rose is a child of the deepest squalor, and the sources really don't sugarcoat her condition. She is feral, unable to read, write, or even reliably use a toilet. A feral child with an intellectual age falling far short of her actual 12 years.
She was severely malnourished, terrified of her new environment, and suffering from a severe inflamed gum and an abscess, which made it agonizingly painful for her to eat.
Molly and Anne had to start with the most rudimentary lessons. How to use modern plumbing, the connection between cleanliness and disease, simple language. She was utterly overwhelmed by 2033.
Va, demonstrating her commitment to the rescue, quickly arranged a dental procedure.
Right. She paid the dentist a substantial amount of cash for sedation to extract the painful tooth. She used her gold allowance to ensure it was done immediately, without any bureaucratic delays.
But crucially, Va took a strand of Rose's hair and Molly's hair to run a DNA test, hoping to confirm Molly's belief that Rose was her lost sister.
And the result, delivered via a cryptic text message back to Va, was definitive. Molly and Rose are not biologically related sisters.
This leads to the profound moral choice.
Molly, having come this far, having witnessed the child's desperation, and understanding the traumatic mission they just went on, decides to suppress the DNA results. She tells the group that they must promise to uphold the narrative. Rose is her sister.
She decides to raise Rose as her sister anyway, determined to provide her with the stable life, education, and protection she desperately needs.
It confirms the group did the morally right thing, even if the mission failed biologically. They exchanged a fractured history for a stable future for one child.
So let's look at Stewart's new path now, which is immediately complicated by all this chaos and the introduction of Lily.
Lily is a vibrant character, a Wicca practitioner, observant of the equinoxes, and, as Stewart notes, frequently prone to saying, "Blessed be." She represents this stark contrast to his past life with Frankie.
Then comes the true personal bombshell that overshadows all of Stewart's new identity confidence.
Lily is now pregnant with his child.
And Stewart is just overwhelmed. He immediately harbors deep suspicions. He admits he used protection except for that one time, and immediately fears she intentionally engineered the pregnancy to coerce him into keeping the relationship going.
To secure his newly acquired financial and temporal stability.
This internal crisis about trust and paternity is immediately eclipsed by Lily's grief and her demands on the time machine.
Lily is consumed by the loss of her father in the 9/11 attacks. He died on the 39th floor of the North Tower, and his body was never recovered. She repeatedly and emotionally demands Va use the traveler to save him.
Or at least to send a warning to stop him from traveling to America.
This is the central ethical dilemma of the entire deep dive, isn't it? We have to treat it as a genuine debate. Lily demands intervention based on love and grief.
But Va and Stewart refuse, citing the veal situation and the previous failure of Jenny, another friend, who failed to save her husband from a traffic accident and ended up with a fractured timeline.
Stewart argues that the risk is simply too great. He states that Lily would be returning to a world where her father, saved from 9/11, might be a complete stranger, and that her own existence could be wiped out or drastically altered.
He uses the lessons learned from Vil. Even a seemingly insignificant nobody, like her insurance agent father, could have massive, unforeseen ramifications, maybe saving a chemist's life earlier in the chain of events that leads to a global disaster.
And Lily's response is explosive. It's directly addressing Va's recent actions. She's enraged by the perceived hypocrisy. It's one rule for you and Va and one law for anybody else.
She argues that Va had no hesitation in retrieving Rose, a child they believed wouldn't affect the timeline, but refuses to help Lily save her father.
She accuses Va of being an absolute dictator and Stewart of being insane and flaky for abandoning his core identity and now refusing to support her. The conflict is unresolvable. Lily leaves Stewart after their confrontation, consumed by fury and grief, fully expecting a letter from a solicitor regarding a divorce settlement and child support, ready to fight him legally despite their new connection. The trauma of time travel has destroyed Stewart's relationship before it even had a chance to solidify, proving the instability extends far beyond history itself.
We have to bring closure to the initial internal crisis by looking at the final fates of the two main traitors, Frankie and Smithers.
Right. Stewart tracks down Frankie, finding him at a temporary job at McDonald's. He's unkempt, miserable, and financially ruined, having been beaten and abandoned by Kevin, who had run through all the money they stole from the gold machine.
And Stewart refuses reconciliation, despite feeling this immense sadness for the man he once loved. He tells Frankie their history is just that history.
He acknowledges that he just doesn't have the capacity to forgive the profound betrayal, and he notes Frankie never even offered a genuine apology for his actions or the pain he caused.
The sources note that Stewart realizes the man he misses isn't Frankie, but the man he used to be 15 or so years ago.
But the narrative provides this strange, dark companionship for Frankie. The sources reveal that Frankie is now tending to old Va. She's recovering from a self-fixed, dislocated hip. She couldn't go to a hospital without revealing her existence.
So old Va and Frankie, two isolated figures, two people discarded by Va's younger circle, have found common ground.
It's a powerful, twisted ending. Frankie plans to sell his horrible slum flat and move in with old Va, forming this sort of isolated, resentment-fueled family unit.
And he even intends to dispose of old Va's body secretly when she finally succumbs to age, ensuring the secrets of their temporal existence remain buried.
It just shows the ultimate corrupting influence of the traveler, that the villain and the traitor end up together, united by their isolation and their anger towards Va.
And Smithers' fate.
Far more straightforward and cowardly. Anne files for divorce, realizing she married a man she couldn't trust. Stewart warns Smithers never to come back.
And Va, ever the pragmatic dictator, takes extra precautions.
Oh, yes. To ensure Lily keeps the group's secrets, Va sends her a chilling text. A reminder about a man we used to know called Vil. This threat confirms Va is absolutely willing to use the terror of temporal exile to maintain the group's security.
So we've witnessed betrayal that tore apart a decades-long relationship, triggering a dramatic and permanent identity shift in Stewart. We saw the accidental introduction of an 18th century psychopath lead to the erasure of history's major milestones, all in the name of a rescue mission that was only morally successful. The cost has just been devastatingly high on every front.
The takeaway for you, the learner here, is profound. The group's attempts to use time travel for intensely personal good or for retribution inevitably leads to immense collateral damage, from Frankie's ruin to terrifying historical collapse.
But their perseverance, Molly raising Rose, Stewart finding a new life, and divorcing Smithers, it shows a deep, persistent sense of morality pushing them to set things right, even when their methods are so flawed.
It is a supremely messy chapter, but what stands out is the complex web of interconnected consequences. Stewart's seismic shift in sexuality, Va's merciless rage, and the terrifying disappearance of St. Paul's Cathedral are all inextricably linked,
demonstrating the sheer complexity and danger of temporal interference, even when it's driven by the deepest personal need or moral conviction.
And even after reversing the most terrible historical disaster, The removal of Christianity from the UK and the disappearance of centuries of culture, the sources reveal that the group did not achieve a complete reset.
We still notice one last anomaly.
An abnormal number of black cars on the road, suggesting a residual, unnoticed change in their reality. Time always leaves a trace of their interference, a subtle reminder that their world is forever slightly different.
Our final thought for you to explore is this. If the history of your world was rewritten, and it resulted in a stable world with fewer major cultural conflicts, but it removed all trace of your favorite cultural artifacts, all your books, all your iconic architecture, all your music, would you push the button to restore the original flawed timeline? Where do the personal and the universal cross paths?